Right. Hello, everyone. I am Alex Lim, your host, and welcome to the penultimate episode of Author Story, the home of authors and stories that matter. This episode's featured guest is Cheryl Krauter, author of this episode's featured book, Odyssey of Ashes, a memoir of love, loss, and letting go. And she's actually a returnee because we've had her almost near exactly 4 years ago. So, Cheryl, welcome back to Author Story. Thank you very much for being with us.
Oh, thank you, Alex. It's good to hear your voice again.
Yeah, and it's great to hear you too. Yeah. So, Cheryl, it's been about 4 years since we last spoke. I mean, it's more like 3 years and 11 months. And
Mm-hmm.
other than, I know a bit of what happened to you based on the subject we'll speak of, but other than that, what's been going on in your life in the past, the past 4 years?
Oh, my goodness.
Sounds like a
uh,
lot. Sounds like a lot.
yeah, a lot. Well, 4 years ago when we first talked, it was the first book that I written because I am very much involved in providing care to cancer patients, their partners, their communities, their friends, and families. So that book was Surviving the Storm,
Yes.
a workbook for telling your cancer story, which was followed about a year later with a book for clinicians who work in psycho-oncology. That book is Psychosocial Care of Cancer Survivors,
Mm-hmm.
a
Mm-hmm.
clinician's guide and workbook to providing wholehearted care.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been very active in the cancer work. And of course, this last year, and I guess a little bit over a year,
Mm-hmm.
when we've all been, in the pandemic,
All right.
I've been working very, very hard with all the distress that has happened, emotional distress, psychological distress during this past year and a half. So I've been doing a lot of very deep work.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the most significant thing that has happened, although I believe it had happened before I talked to you. I'm not sure the exact date when we first talked, but my husband
Mm-hmm.
died suddenly
Uh-huh.
uh, on May 14th of 2016, and
Uh-huh.
that is what that event was what the latest book, Odyssey of Ashes, grew out of
Mm-hmm.
that horrific experience and then the ensuing experiences after that.
Mm-hmm.
So the book came from that. So in the last years, I've done a lot of writing and a lot of work in my
Mm-hmm.
psychology practice and
Right.
trying to have a little fun from time to time.
Right. Okay. I got that. Okay. So we spoke in around May of 2017. So that means we first spoke about a year after your husband passed.
That's yeah, okay. Thanks
Yeah.
for the yeah, okay.
Yeah.
The
So
timeline.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So for those of you interested in hearing about Cheryl and her previous author story interview, the links will be included in the blog. So you can catch up on that. All right. So now on to the topic, as well as the book. And if you think Cheryl, if you think I'm getting too personal, please let me know. Okay.
Sure,
So
sure.
first,
Thanks, Alex. Uh-huh.
yeah. So first off, what was John like?
That's interesting. I was thinking about that this morning.
Mm-hmm.
John was an artist. He ended up being an artist. He did not start being an artist. He had been a real estate broker for many years
Uh-huh.
and
Uh-huh.
then decided that he wanted to transition into um, being a jewelry maker. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what he did. He was a very artistic, highly intelligent,
Wow.
extremely impatient
Okay. Okay.
uh, man, and he was also an expert fly fisher,
Okay.
and that was one
Okay.
of his great loves. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Hmm?
All right. And I mean, so I guess we know that you two are close. I mean,
Mhm.
you two are very close. I can imagine. And so, if I might ask, how did John pass away? I mean, I'm assuming it wasn't due to cancer or anything like that, was it?
No, in fact, the first chapter of the memoir starts with the when he died, which he died as the death record said, he died in less than 5 minutes. It happened in the
Wow.
early hour mornings of May 14th,
Wow.
uh, when he woke up with some back pain, some neck pain, which again was not unusual
Uh huh.
because he suffered from back pain.
Uh huh. Uh huh.
Um, and so, it was. one of those early morning hazy things, and he was in a lot of pain, and I was trying to help him, and
Uh-huh.
then he said, well, I'll just, sit here. It was in the family room, and so I went back to bed, and
Right.
then in moments, I just, yeah, and as in the book says, let me see, let me find the passage here. That might be, okay, yeah. I leave him lying on the floor, stretching, and dutifully pad back to bed. He'll be okay. He's not clammy. He's not nauseous. He's
Mm-hmm.
not short of breath. He'll be fine, I tell myself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Moments after I lie down, I suddenly feel panicky. I'm clammy. I am nauseous. I am
Mm-hmm.
short of breath. Maybe we have food poisoning. What is happening? As I attempt to get comfortable in bed, a terrible wind begins to howl all around me.
Mm-hmm.
It's a sound unlike any noise I've ever heard, reverberating from the other room. It's like the winds of a tornado ripping through our home. Then a procession of noises, a deeply guttural gasp for air, a roaring snort combined with the loudest snore I have ever heard.
Mm-hmm.
These horrifying sounds are accompanied by the sound of a rushing watery release, a torrent of some kind of liquid. Is that a waterfall? Has the ceiling collapsed?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then it goes on, and I go into the room and find him and realize he's not breathing, and then the whole circus of calling 911 and
Right.
them
Right.
arriving, coming through the home, and
Right.
and yeah,
Yeah.
begins to happen. So yeah.
Right. I mean, so he had no. This was very sudden. Then I take it. I mean, it sounds like he had
Yes.
no pre-existing conditions. Nothing that would indicate, he could be suffering from something really bad.
No. Mm-mm.
Wow. Okay. So, geez, really sudden. Wow. Okay. All right. I
Yeah.
got that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and a belated years belated, but my condolences for that. Jeez. Wow.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so you did mention that John was a fly fisherman. So this
Mhm.
has a bearing, I imagine, on the prize that he won in late of 2016. Can you tell us a little
Mhm.
bit about this?
Yes, this was the book really centers around this story. In
Okay.
fact, I decided to write the book around this story. John, I when I had cancer, I was very fortunate to about a year after I got out of treatment, or no, it wasn't even that long. Anyway, a
Mm-hmm.
period of time after I got out of treatment, um, John had learned about an organization called Casting for Recovery, and what they do is they take women who have had breast cancer, they give them a beautiful weekend. They have some what they call river helpers. They
Uh-huh.
come to help the women learn how to fly fish and so on. I
Wow.
was fortunate enough to win that raffle.
Okay.
And that
Okay.
was in 2008. And
Uh-huh.
so from there, I told John, they have river helpers at
Uh-huh.
Casting for Recovery. And these are fly fishermen or fly fisher women
Mm-hmm.
who come and help guide the women. And so he joined, and for 9 years, he would go to the retreats and he would guide women in the river and help them learn how to fly fish. Well,
Mm-hmm.
each year, Casting for Recovery has a gala, and they have, of course, a raffle, as they do at these sorts of events.
Right, right.
Each year, they offer a prize of a guided fly fishing trip for two in, some of the most illustrious fly fishing areas in the world, usually Montana.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
he would always buy a $50 ticket and, hope each year that he would win. Well, as fortune would have it, that year, 2016, he bought a ticket about a month before he died.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
his friend who used to run a lot of the organization, she decided when the raffle happened in October of 2016
Mm-hmm.
to put his ticket in the hopper. So at the
Okay.
event, she was, they roll the basket, and lo and behold, she picks out his name.
Mm-hmm.
So he had won this trip, and
Wow.
she told me she was a very emotional moment for her. She really couldn't call out his name. She had to someone else do it.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, she then offered me this trip,
Uh-huh.
and so I thought, well, this is kind of a magical event, a magical experience. So I then in 2017, in July of 2017, I went to Montana on my own and went on this guided fishing trip that was given to me, that John had one and
Right.
that I then took in his stead. And he had all his wish for his ashes had been to have them scattered by a trout stream or a fabulous trout river.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my commitment. I took his ashes. I did not do it on the fly fishing trip, but I did it the next day. I found a spot where
Right.
I then fulfilled that promise.
Right. Okay. Okay. All right. Great. Okay. So, I don't think I have to remark. I mean, that the loss of a loved one is a major disjunction in one's life. I'm sure there are a lot of people, listeners and non-listeners to the show alike, who have experienced that. And
Hmm.
I find it interesting that you mentioned like there's like a twin world that you live in, like there's the
Hmm.
everyday world where you have to go wake up and you have to do your things, do your job, do your work, and then
Hmm.
side by side, that parallel to that is a world that you also exist in, one that, where as you say, it's absence and memory. um
Hmm.
this really isn't spoken of, is it? I mean, this really isn't in the common conversation.
I think that's a very good point, Alex. And it was one of my fears, to be really honest. It's like, oh my goodness, I'm opening up this incredibly vulnerable world that that I'm inhabiting. And I do think, though, and my intention is always with what I do, whether it be the books or any work I do, is to have something that others can take away. So I'm glad you mentioned others that might be listening. I believe it is a very common occurrence to go into a timeless place. This may particularly occur with sudden death
Mm-hmm.
when there's no preparation. And so, the trauma of a sudden death takes, I would say, just in my personal experience, along with helping others, I would say at least a good year to all of a sudden you realize you come back into a certain kind of reality.
Uh-huh.
So it's a suspended state. And of being almost feeling like between the worlds, like the world of deep grief and a timeless sense. Grief can be very timeless.
Mm-hmm.
What
Mm-hmm.
day is it? What time is it? Excuse me, where am I? At the same time, okay, get up, have the coffee, pay
Right.
the bills, do the
Right.
work, and
Right.
this very parallel sense. And so, what helped me through that certainly is my meditation practice
Mm-hmm.
in terms of grounding that and being able to sort of travel between those worlds, between a sort of other world and then the day-to-day world.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I'd like to get your opinion on this as a psychotherapist, someone,
Hmm.
and as well as someone who's experienced this. What is it about living in those two parallel worlds that uh, people are reluctant to talk about it?
Well, I think people feel like it's crazy. And
Okay.
what's true, and people are very, very afraid of losing some sense of, oh, this is what reality is. And so to travel between different sort of states of experience, states of consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
I think can be very scary for people. And they
Mm-hmm.
don't want people to know that they are, sort of losing track of what their day-to-day lives. And I think that that can be what people fear, like, oh my God, I'll go
Uh-huh.
crazy, or I'll get lost in this and I won't be able to find my way back to the paying of the bills. Or
Right.
people get very scared that they'll just fall into a pit and not be able to climb out. So I think that's why I think people avoid that level, because of the fear, and they don't want to talk about it because people are uncomfortable.
Mm,
Uh,
okay.
I know
Oh,
when people have read this book, they say, "Oh my gosh, I've never read anything, where someone just lays it out like this."
right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I have to give you credit because I mean, like I said, this isn't part of the common conversation, and this is probably more common than people think, and it has to be spoken of.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, I think anytime that there's a traumatic death, there's the kind of death where, in quotes, this is the way it's supposed to go. Someone has a great life, they have a full sense of their own experience, they go old, and then they peacefully just, go to sleep. That's what we all like to put our order in for, right?
Right.
But that doesn't get to happen very much.
Mm-hmm.
And Alex, there's quite a bit that's been written about, for instance, end of life care, people that have illnesses, whether they be, in quotes, a short illness or a longer illness, a
Mm-hmm.
chronic illness,
Mm-hmm.
where there's actually a process people deal with death and dying. And
Mm-hmm.
those are really beautiful books. They're beautiful offerings. But there is very little written about the trauma of a sudden death, whether it be a heart attack, a stroke, a terrible accident,
Right.
anything like that. I think it's so frightening to people because it highlights the ephemeral quality of our lives and how in less than 5 minutes our entire life can change.
Wow. Yes. And you definitely know this from personal experience. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So it was I mean from what I understand, with a circumstance like this, with major changes, major trauma, and you kind of sink into a deep pit. Well, deep emotional pit. There's
Hmm.
eventually a time when you hit rock bottom. When was that time for you? When was that realization for you? Like, this is it. This is as deep as it goes.
Hmm. Well, that's an interesting question. I would say, I don't know if I would call it rock bottom, but I would say when I really went into the deepest moment was the day that I did go on the journey to find the place to scatter his ashes beside the Madison River in Montana.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I was trying to find the exact spot, and what happened that day in Montana, which I didn't know until actually some months later, is that incredible storm was brewing and then
Uh-huh.
exploded, and it was a raging storm, pouring rain, lights in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been in a storm like that before, and I was driving through it,
Mm-hmm.
trying to find the spot, and then it would clear,
Mm-hmm.
and I was, of course, quite emotional.
Yeah.
And when I did finally find the spot, it was again just this incredible wind and rain storm, and I was in the depths of grief in terms of what felt like leaving him
Mm-hmm.
um, behind where he wanted to be left, but where I would then have to go.
Right.
And what I found out later, and the next day after this event, um, when I did scatter his ashes, the Northern Lights appeared in Montana all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden.
Mm-hmm.
And so the next evening was like this whole rainbow of Northern Lights, and remarkable to see that. Many people never see that in their entire lives. I've been fortunate to see the Northern Lights twice, both in Montana.
Wow.
And what I later found out is that what had happened that day was what they call, like this. There's a way in which the sun sends particles and explodes onto the ground, and that's
Mm-hmm.
what I had been driving through.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was again an experience that took a lot out of me, but oh my goodness, it was just remarkable. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Right. Okay. Okay. And
yeah.
since we're also on the topic of subject, I mean the road to coming to terms with, what people I guess would call the new normal. You know,
Mhm.
it's not a smooth and easy one, and I imagine that even though you have come to terms with it, it still does hit you, doesn't it?
Oh, of course. In fact, as we're talking, I can feel the emotion. And this was something I knew about, putting this story out into the world, is that I would need to keep reliving
Mm-hmm.
what had happened. And certainly it's not as acute as it once was. And I think that's
Right.
what's important to give to people, is that there's some kind of myth that we get over our losses, we get over
Yes.
our grief, and there can be pressure that people feel. Oh, you're better now, and
Yeah.
oh, you should be okay. It's been
Yeah.
this amount of time, and
Yeah.
you never know what unexpected memories might crop up, or
Mm-hmm.
emotions. Sometimes they're at times you think, well, gosh, this is an anniversary or a birthday.
Right.
I should be feeling something, and then look over and you see a card or something, and all floods in.
Uh-huh.
So I know new normal is a term used often in the world of cancer. I always say to people, I have no idea what normal is anymore after all the
Okay.
years that I've, but there is a time when your life, you sort of move beyond and into your life, and your life has changed, and then
Uh-huh.
you create whatever life that is now present for you.
Right. And I have to thank you for bringing that out because I mean, as you said, the myth. I mean, it's myths can be okay, but they can also be pretty damaging. And I mean,
Yeah.
psychologically, I mean, like thinking that okay, you get over this, you won't think about it, you feel like you did before the incident happened,
Yeah.
and that's not really the case. So, I have to commend you for putting that out there because it's something that I'm sure holds a lot of folks back.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you. Yes, I think it's important to know that, when you have had someone in your life that has mattered to you a great deal, that they're always with you. So it's not as though that loss ever ends. You just learn how to have them with you in a different way.
Hmm. So okay, so it's like, they're still there, but they're not there, something like that.
Well, it's a very interesting experience to feel, at least this is my experience, and I know it's not completely unique to me, is that after someone initially dies, you feel them around,
Uh-huh.
and then you start to not feel them around. And to me, that's part of, well, you need to let that spirit go.
Uh-huh.
Uh, they need to go on their journey, you need to go on your own journey, and there's many different partings that happen.
Mm-hmm.
I've experienced different levels, and deeper parting, then all of a sudden, oh, I feel that person around me now. I have felt John around me more lately, because I think he'd like to be a part of this story, and see what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Right. And,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead, sorry.
No, I'm done, thank you. Mhm.
Okay, because you also bring up a point that I think people aren't really aware of, and that it's not just the how do I say it, the parting as you call it, the coming to terms with it. It's not just a one-time thing. I mean, it's a, I don't know, you'd call it a process, a progression.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, it is a process, and I believe that that's what's so important for people to be able to feel that they can take the time and have the space to really go through the process.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is how you heal.
Mm-hmm.
If you try and shove it away or ignore it or say, oh, it doesn't matter,
Right.
or try and, in quotes, get on with it without really allowing yourself to fully grieve, then that's going to be it's held in your body, it's held in your psyche.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, and again, in this book, there's a lot about rivers and water, and how everything just keeps flowing. And when you lose somebody, it seems like, well, no, life doesn't go on, and then you realize, well, oh, but yeah, it's the next day, and then it's the next day, and
Right.
that's one of the most odd feelings, is that how can life be going on?
Uh-huh.
But it does, and so that's part of learning how to just go into the flow and not swim against the current.
Right. Okay. Okay. All right. Cool. I got that. Okay. So now about the book, I mean, this is a memoir, and there are a lot of memoirs out there. I mean, we know what a memoir is all about. I mean, it's talking about something that happened once in the past. It happened once life, but I mean, this is also a bit of a learning experience and a journey. I mean, the journey you
Mhm,
took. So,
mhm.
are there any major lessons that, could be learned from that you mentioned, or that could be learned from people reading this book?
Um, well, my hope is that people who read this book feel moved by whatever losses, whatever grief they have, and feel a sense of permission
Mm-hmm.
to explore and discover and to talk about all the different worlds that they travel through. So I would hope that.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to say that there's humor in this book.
Mm-hmm.
because I have humor, and so there's experiences that can be funny even in, the depths of sorrow.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that balance. I think that there's another takeaway of the balance of that all the while that you are crying and feeling loss, you also look to having laughter and joys, and it's not like it's all dark.
Mm-hmm.
There can be moments of humor and
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm.
And just I think like even the title, the Odyssey.
Yeah.
Grief is an odyssey, and this sort of thing is a journey and an odyssey. And I hope that people can take away that, just that to feel to honor their own journeys,
Mm-hmm.
and if they feel like talking about it with others, fine. If not, fine. But just to really honor
Mm-hmm.
their own journey.
Right. Okay. All right. Okay. Got that. Okay. Okay. Cheryl, in this last minute or so of this interview, are there any words of wisdom you'd like to share, maybe to inspire listeners?
Um, yeah, I would like to share that regardless of events, losses, griefs that knock you over on the ground,
Mm-hmm.
that you can get up, and then you might fall down again, and then you can
Mm-hmm.
get up and you might fall down again,
Mm-hmm.
but that you will shine again. You will find a way to create your new life,
Mm-hmm.
and no matter what, through storms and bad weathers, that you will be able to shine again.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. Great words. Great words right there. Great. Okay, then, so in closing, our guest is Cheryl Krauter. Her book is Odyssey of Ashes, a memoir of love, loss, and letting go, and you can find it on Amazon. So thank you very much for being on Author Story yet again. It was a lot of fun being able to speak to you yet again.
Yeah, Alex, thank you so much. All the
Okay,
best to you, huh?
yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so everyone, check out Odyssey of Ashes and catch you guys next time on Author Story, the home of authors and people with stories that matter.